All right, well, welcome everyone. Today's session is entitled Supporting a Range of Math Learners with Menus and Choice Boards. My name is Tanaga Rogers, and if that name is daunting to you, you can just say, hey, T. I answer to that as well. And I'll be facilitating today's session. Before we dive into the actual content, I want to make sure everybody's familiar with WebEx and how to use that. So my suggestion is for optimal viewing that you use the icons in the far right corner of your screen and select the one that looks like stacked rectangles for the floating panel view. That'll make my presentation really big, and then you can move the chat box and the participant box in the videos around to where is most comfortable to you. A couple of people, Allison, you're saying you can hear, but you can't hear anybody speaking. You may want to exit out and then join back again and make sure that when you join, you select call with my computer or use internet audio. If you're still having trouble when you come back in, let me know and I'll give you a number that you can call into to get the audio. Once you select those stacked rectangles and you're in floating panel view, then you'll have a control panel rather that will appear when you hover your mouse either at the top of your screen or it might be at the bottom of your screen for some of you. But when you hover your mouse, then the control panel will appear and you should be able to select the icons for participant and chat, and a pop-out box will appear just like the one that's on the screen displaying right now. And then you should have a hand icon. Hold on, I'm trying to get this box off. Do you guys see a gray box? All right, let's try this one more time. All right, there we go. You will have a hand icon that's right next to the bottom of your participant box. And you can flag my attention at any point during our time together today. You can use this icon or any of the others listed to the right of the hand to ask or volunteer a question. So let's go ahead and try that feature out now. And go ahead and raise your hand using that hand tool. Great. I see Sunny's hand is up and Carol. Perfect. So a bunch of you were able to find that tool. I'll wait for a couple more people to try it out just to make sure everyone is able to grab my attention throughout the session. Anna or Jane or Kayla, can any of you try to raise your hand?
Yeah, I'm trying right now.
Okay. And Allison's saying, I don't think the web version has the hand tool. You may not be able to find it. Okay. Thanks for letting me know that. Well, you can always unmute yourself. I am going to try and keep everybody muted just for the case of like being able to hear really clearly. But if you want to unmute yourself, feel free to do that if you'd rather just speak out in chat. Sarah, I saw your hand go up, so you found it also. Okay. Allison's saying the web version has the hand tool under the 3 dots. So if you click the 3 dots, and the hand tool shows up there. So there's a bunch of ways you can get my attention. Just type it in the chat box, unmute yourself, or if you have the hand tool, you can raise your hand as well. You will have control over your own audio. So right next to your name, there should be a mute, unmute button and a camera on and off button. And if you'd like to turn your camera off, the session is being recorded. So if you don't want to be on the OSCE website and a web star, then you might want to turn your camera off as well. All right, and then the final tool that we're going to try out today and use throughout the session is the annotation tool. Up at the top, wherever your control panel is, when you hover, there should be a little pen tool, and that's the annotate tool. Selecting that icon will give you access to different drawing tools. So we're going to try that out really quickly now. The tool that we'll probably use most often with the annotation is the arrow button, which is right underneath the highlighter tool. It's an arrow pointing to the right, and it should allow you to place an arrow anywhere on the screen, like my little red one there. I see someone was able to write. Jane's able to find her arrow. Great. Carol's got hers. Perfect. So there'll be opportunities to participate. I really want to make this as engaging as possible. So please feel free to chat in the box, make this a discussion, unmute yourself. When there's opportunities to participate and write on the screen or do a poll, please take that opportunity.
I have a quick question.
Please jump in.
I'm on the phone because when I hit and I don't know if it's because I'm on the phone, but I got on the phone because I couldn't get into the link. It kept thing, and so it says you already have one meeting in progress. Can't join another. So I'm having problems getting in.
I wonder if are you logged in? Like, check your other browser tabs and make sure you're not logged in somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe close all your browser tabs and then open up your email again and click on my link and try and open that way.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so Asi is bringing today's training to you. I'm from the Division of Teaching and Learning, and our goal or aim is to provide research-based, high-quality professional development and support to teachers across the district. All of our sessions are aligned with the high leverage practices for inclusive classrooms. If you're unfamiliar with that book, it's pictured on the screen, and basically it's just 22 critical practices that are used in classrooms, and they have been shown to improve student outcomes when implemented. They are designed for special education students, but they work well with all students. So on the screen are 12 of the 22 practices. These are the 12 that are related to instruction. And the 2 that are highlighted in gold are the ones that today's session is focused around. So this idea of systematically designing instruction towards a specific learning goal and adapting curriculum tasks and materials for specific learning goals. So browse through the chart and list in chat the number of any of the practices maybe that you're familiar with. Even if you haven't heard of the buzzword high leverage practice, I'm sure you have interacted with some of these instructional strategies before and probably are using some of them. Oh, thank you, Jane, for sharing that. I'll be sure to share that with others. So if you're on the web version and you're looking for the hand tool, it is in your participant list next to your name. If you'd like any more information about the high leverage practices, there's a little like one-pager blurb about each one of these practices in the Google Sessions folder as well. Jesse's saying she's familiar with the whole second row. I love it. Providing scaffolded supports. That's right. If you've ever used a sentence or an anchor chart, then you are on the right track and using high leverage practices. Good. Matilda's shouting out a few too. Number 11 seems to be really popular. Prioritizing long and short-term goals. Yeah. So pat yourself on the back. You're already doing some best practices, and you're going to learn another strategy today. So by the end of this course, you'll be able to do the outcomes that are listed on the screen. I'll give you a minute to read through them, and then we'll use our arrow tool, or if you want to use the highlighter, you can do that. Or if you don't have those tools and you're on the web version and you want to just type in the chat box, you can do that as well. Go ahead and put the outcome that is of the most interest to you. All right, Michelle is saying number 2. Jane is saying number 2. Jesse's interested in number 3 mostly. Yes. So we're going to spend the first part of our time together talking about how we can use menus and choice boards. How do we create those to meet students' needs by linking standards that are within the grade level as well as some that are prior knowledge, right? We probably are going to need to address a wide range of learners in this upcoming school year. And then number 3 is going to be all throughout. Anytime we're talking about a menu or a choice board, we are talking about opportunities for choice. So we will tackle that all throughout the next 2 hours. All right, the norms on the screen are ones that many groups find useful when working together. Go ahead and read those, and then let me know if there's anything that you feel like we should add or modify. Also keep in mind that in this online space, it'll be really important to participate and keep your mic on mute when you're not speaking. And if you'd like, we always love to see a face, so you can use your video when speaking as well. I see a couple of faces. It's nice to know other people are out there, Anna and Sandra. All right, well, let's take a couple moments to kind of build some community. We all know that it's going to take more than an hour. Sometimes it takes the whole school year, right, to build community, but I do want to take some moments to make connections to each other and find common ground in the work that we do. So we're going to do an activity called Glow and Grow. So I want you to introduce yourself in the chat box, say your role in education, and then share either one thing you're proud of with regards to distance learning and your past school year, or one goal that you have, something, an area maybe you want to grow in for the upcoming school year. So we'll take a minute to think about that, and then I'll share first. All right, so for those of you maybe that joined a little late, my name is Tanaga Rogers, and I'm the Math Content Specialist at the Division of Teaching and Learning. One thing that I am proud of is back in May, we held some educator content sessions, and we were able to highlight different digital tools that teachers were using and create a space for them to like share their authentic classroom experience with each other. And so that was a real highlight for me. I thought a lot of teachers gave feedback that it was really helpful. And those videos are posted on the OSSI website if anyone is interested in going back to watch those. So now you guys, it's your turn. Throw in the chat box, or if some people would like to introduce themselves over audio, that's fine too. Your name, your role in education, and maybe a glow or a grow.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Carol
Thanks.
Phillip, and
Hi,
I'm
Carol.
I'm a high school math teacher at School Without Walls, and my glow is that my students really trusted me in the spring to not jip them and keep them learning over this
crazy time.
Yeah. They actually came to class when I asked them to. I had like 90%, 99% some days.
That's awesome.
So it was really, I was really, really proud of them. And my grow is that I want to be able to use technology more efficiently. I mean, I kind of winged it in the spring and I was proud of what I did, but I really want to know what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that. Sarah's saying in chat that she's a math coach and she is hoping to gain more strategies to engage all learners in distance learning, similar to you, Carol. Regina is saying her grow is to connect more to students during distance learning. Another similarity there. Sandra is, or maybe it's Sandra. You can unmute Sandra if you want to tell me how to say it correctly. She was able to conduct online classes with her students and keep them engaged. Love it. Looks like we can learn from each other here today. So if you've got ideas as we talk about menus and choice boards, please throw them out in the chat box. Mathilde is 4th through 8th grade math teacher, 26 years of teaching. Woohoo! And her grow is being able to provide robust instruction to students using technology. Yes. Well, you all are in luck. Today, the menus and choice boards that I'm going to share with you, I created them all online. Some of them are tweaked from a paper version. And so it is possible to use these. The goal is to use these even in a distance or remote learning environment. So feel encouraged about that. You will be able to pivot this tool and use it in the upcoming school year, whatever it may look like. All right, here's our agenda for today. We will plan to take a break right at 11 o'clock, and then we will end right at noon. We plan to spend some time talking just about the structure of mathematics at first and how that structure really is conducive to menus and choice boards. And then we'll look at 3 different examples of menus and choice boards at the elementary, the middle, and the high school level. And then we will spend the last hour talking mostly about implementation, sharing ideas about how we can make this work and get it off the ground in our classrooms, and then application time at the end to kind of curate some resources and walk away with some starting points. So let's dive right in. I want to pause for a moment before we start this very first session and make sure that no one is having tech troubles and everyone is ready to go. Does anyone have any pressing questions? Everybody can access the Google folder. Okay. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Thanks. And we've got some more intros going on in the chat as well. Anna, her glow from distance learning is being flexible. That's so key in such uncertain times. And Jane's glow is learning new tech tools. And Jesse's glow was similar. My class was amazing online and was committed to learning. That sounds like Carol's class. Great. So in this first session, we are going to consider how math is structured and how that structure is impacted when there's unfinished teaching and learning. So to start, I want you to just look at the graphic that's on the screen and share in the chat box what you noticed. What do you see? What stands out to you? Algebra is standing out. That's a big chunk, right? There's all these smaller connected topics that are building towards algebra. Understanding the number system is critical to move forward, but can also be a good starting point to assess and work backwards to address gaps. Yes, Mathilde, we're going to talk about that. Matilda, we're going to talk about that today a lot. Yeah, you guys are pulling out exactly what the graphic is showing, which is that math is connected, right? I mean, all of the skills and concepts that students are learning are not supposed to be isolated. They're all building on one another. When the Common Core was first being developed, they actually started with what they call progressions, which are these 10, 15-page documents that just talk about how operations and algebraic thinking should progress throughout from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. And then after they wrote those progressions, they then separated those into grade levels. So even when the Common Core was designed, it was designed to build ideas developmentally year by year, which is exactly what you guys are saying in the chat. Oh, Dallas just wrote, I notice how they're all interrelated. Yes. So keeping that in mind, knowing that skills are connected horizontally and vertically, what does that mean for the teacher, right? So if we think about 4th grade, for example, if you're a 4th grade teacher, you not only have to know the concepts and the skills and the sequence of 4th grade content, but you also have to know vertically how that content in 4th grade is connected to 3rd grade content and 5th grade content and beyond, really. So that can be kind of daunting, right? To think, oh my gosh, I need to know all these other grade levels. But there are tools and resources out there to help us so that we can help make math a more connected subject area and not this idea that it's a set of procedures or skills. So think about that structure of mathematics, and then I want you to think about where we are right now, currently, right? There's 2 new buzzwords in mathematics education right now, really in all of education, and it's unfinished teaching or unfinished learning. Give me an amen if you've heard one of those phrases used recently since COVID started, since January, right? Yeah, Sarah's like, yep, she's heard it. So I feel like there's a lot of panic because we're like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? Because kids haven't been in school for, so many months. So let's dive into what exactly do these terms mean. And I also want to point out how it's really not that different than what we've already and always been doing, right? So unfinished teaching just references that concepts and skills maybe that were not directly taught or assessed prior to the student entering your classroom or that grade level. And then unfinished learning is more related on the student, right? These are concepts and standards that the student hasn't mastered. So in the past, prior to COVID, unfinished teaching might have looked like maybe you didn't get to chapter 12 in your textbook or you didn't get to the last unit. And so you didn't cover or finish the entire curriculum. That might be unfinished teaching. This year, we all have experienced unfinished teaching because of COVID and schools being closed down. Or switching rather to not being closed down, but switching to more distant remote learning situations. And then unfinished learning in the past could have been caused by a number of things, like students switching schools or not having enough time to master a skill. We know students all have their own individual kind of timeline to mastery. And so maybe, the month that you covered rates and ratios, another student needed a little more time than that. Any combination of this unfinished teaching or unfinished learning is going to result in a classroom with a range of learners. And regardless of how familiar you are with the technical language, if you have taught in a classroom, then you have probably experienced one, if not both, of these scenarios before. So either way, the case remains that we're going to have a range of learners in our class, and we need some kind of structure to address that all these students are in so many different places, right? So how can we approach this unfinished math instruction, knowing that everyone's had either unfinished teaching or unfinished learning, and that math is so connected? Well, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics and the National Council of Supervisors of Mathematics has come out with a joint statement, and it's on the screen. I'll give you a moment to read through it. And then can I get someone from one of the participants to read it aloud? You can just unmute yourself and then read it for us.
Provide differentiated support for each student to reach grade level standards by designing rich Tier 1 instruction that allows for multiple entry points and solution pathways and uses a range of approaches.
Thanks, Anna. Throw in the chat box what stands out to you in that quote. Like, is there a word or maybe a phrase that just kind of jumps out at you? Multiple entry points. Differentiated support. Range of approaches, rich tier 1 instruction. Yes. So how can we do all of that, right? It can feel a little daunting to think I have to do rich tier 1 instruction, differentiated support. There's going to be a range of approaches that I need to also keep in mind. It's a lot for us to juggle as teachers. And so menus and choice boards are two tools that kind of wrap all of that into one and can help you take action to meet the needs of a wide range of students in a tier 1 environment with differentiated support and multiple entry points. So what exactly is a menu or a choice board? Menus and choice boards are really a collection of tasks that offer a variety of learning experiences that students choose from. So this isn't though like a free-for-all. The teacher is going to select the tasks that are on the menu or the choice board. And then you're going to determine also as the teacher what's a must do versus what's a can do. Like, what do you want everybody in the class to do this, but they can have choices about X, Y, and Z. And then students, once the menu is created, students work in a variety of different grouping structures, whether that's independently in a small group, they could work on their menu, or with a partner, to complete the menu or choice board. And again, they're not doing everything on the menu or choice board, but they're choosing which items they are going to do based on what you decided in advance was a mandatory task and what choices they could make. Now, when you're doing and giving menus and choice boards, you also have the option, it kind of frees you up when students are working on the menu and choice board to pull a small group or give individual support to students who maybe need some additional attention. All the tasks on a menu or choice board are supposed to support all the students in your class in meeting the instructional goals, because there's going to be a range of activities on there. And on the right side of the screen are just some ideas about the variety of math tasks that could be used on the menu or board. So when we talk about, like Jane pulled out range of approaches out of that quote, this is the range of approaches. You can have any of these things on your menu or choice board, any combination of these things. The menu or the choice board is given to all students. So that's a tier 1 approach. So how can we create this robust menu, right? How can we create a range of accessible activities and still meet that grade level standard? There's a question coming in from Carol. She wants to know, how many choices should they have? It's going to vary. So in the very next session, I'm going to show you 3 different example menus, and you'll see how it really could be 5 choices, or it could be as many as 20 choices. And you can use a variety of menus and choice boards depending on your learners, the content you're teaching, what time of year you're in. You know, maybe at the beginning of the year, you start out with only 3 or 4 choices. And then by the end of the year, students are better at making choices, and you can offer more choices to them and maybe give up to 10, 15 choices. Good question. Keep them coming. So back to this idea, how can we create a range of accessible activities and still meet that grade level standard? Rather than focusing on everything students don't know about a concept, the idea here is that we can thoughtfully select what prior knowledge is going to be needed to meet that upcoming standard that you're teaching next week. So instead of reteaching the entire 3rd grade unit on fractions, because maybe students miss that unit because it comes at the end of the year, instead, maybe the teacher focuses more narrowly on just the 2 fraction standards that are related to understanding what fractions are, because that's what they're going to really need to access the 4th grade standards. So in order to do this work of figuring out, okay, what's most essential from the previous grade level and how am I going to connect that to what I have to teach next week, there is a tool out there that kind of helps us do that connecting and linking, and it's called the Coherence map. I see Matilda is saying she uses the Coherence map already. Yay! That was going to be my next question. Share in chat how familiar you are with the Coherence map. Have you heard of it before? Never heard of it? Seen it but never used it? Okay, a couple people saying they've used it. Yay! Matilda, Anna, Jesse. Oh, Jesse's saying he's never heard of it. Great. That's okay. I'm going to give you time to explore. Sandra, did you want to say something? You unmuted yourself. How familiar are you?
I've seen it before.
Okay. Have you used it?
Yeah, used it
Okay.
in our LEAP meetings. But yeah, I've seen it before. Yeah.
Okay, great. So for those of you that aren't familiar, I want to give you some time to just quickly look through it because we are going to use it today. So the Coherence map is interactive. When you click on a standard, then you're going to be, it's going to automatically link for you other standards. So I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to share the link in chat. If you are familiar with it and you've used it before, then I'd like for you to maybe use it in a different way today. So maybe look at a different grade level or check out maybe high school if you're in some of the secondary grade, primary grades rather. All right, so here we are on the Coherence Map website. You're going to click just the Get Started button, and then you'll select a grade. I'm just going to choose 4th grade. And then you're going to select a cluster, a domain rather. And then you will, it will list all the clusters rather for you after that. And then once you select, just pick any standard for now. Once you select a standard, then it will map that standard. And the way to see how that standard is connected to other standards, you want to click that magnifying glass with the minus in it, and it'll zoom out for you. And you can move the screen around to see the different standards. So this one is mapped all the way back to 2nd grade. So I'll just give you a few minutes to map the standard or map a standard, try it out, and then come back to the chat in, let's say, 2 minutes and share maybe something that you noticed when you might use this tool, how it connects to the work you already do. Those of you that are already using it, maybe share 1 or 2 ways that you've been using it. Thank you, Allison, for sharing that in the chat. I'll also have another place for you to share it at the end of today's session too. So keep that in your back pocket. Yes, Sunny just discovered that when you scroll down for that particular standard, there are links to assessments and different tasks, which is great for that idea of, oh, I teach 4th grade, and you're telling me I have to kind of know some of what's happening in 3rd grade and 5th grade too. So this is a great resource to help pull tasks from other grade levels that maybe you are less familiar with. And we're going to use this tool today to help us build and see how choice boards and menus are created. Kayla's sharing that she's used the Coherence map to list prerequisite skills. Perfect. Wonderful suggestion there, Kayla. Anna's sharing she uses it when when teachers are getting ready to start a new module. They look at the Coherence map to understand the core work that happened in the year prior in comparison to what grade level standard says. Yeah, and that's exactly the work, Anna, that you're talking about, and you too, Kayla. That work that you guys are already doing is the same work you're doing, even in this socially distanced, upcoming school year where there's been so much unfinished teaching and learning. Yeah, there's also chats coming in about being able to use this tool to help with IEP goals. All right, so thanks everyone for indulging in that little exploration. We're now going to explore some of these classroom scenarios and get a real picture of what a choice board or menu looks like and how it might be used to meet the range of needs in a classroom. So as we explore, I want to encourage you to think about how these examples could be adapted to fit the needs of your classroom. And I know we don't have students yet, but we might think about in the context of last year's students, or just things that you already know about teaching the grade or teaching mathematics, really. So first we'll experience each menu through the lens of the teacher, and there'll be opportunities for you guys to ask questions. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some time to explore those menus in the Google folder as a student would. So stick with me here on the PowerPoint to go through the teacher lens. And then what's in the Google folders is the student facing menu so that you can see what it would look like for the learner. All right, so the first menu that we're going to go through is from a primary classroom. This is a first grade classroom, and I'm going to give you just like a classroom scenario so you can get a sense of how it might be used. Let's say it's the first quarter, and this teacher is going to introduce a standard that is deeply rooted in some prior knowledge from kindergarten. So she plans on teaching 10AC6, which says students are going to be able to add and subtract fluently within 20. This is a major part of first grade, like 65 to 85% of the first grade curriculum has to do with adding and subtracting fluently within 20. And it's something that the teacher knows they're going to routinely visit throughout the school year. This standard also closely connects with 10AC5, which says that students will relate counting to addition and subtraction. So even though this standard is very lofty and it's got lots of connections throughout first grade, the first grade teacher has decided that she's only going to focus her menu on just one part of the standard, which is addition. And she selects some routines and games that the students are already familiar with that she introduced at the beginning of the year that build fluency from kindergarten, but could also be switched out easily throughout the year. So the menu that you're looking at has three parts. There's an appetizer on the left, a main dish in the middle, and then the dessert on the right. Students have to complete at least one appetizer, so one of these three activities on the left. Everybody is going to do the main dish. And then students can do one more activity of their choice. It might be an appetizer, or they might choose to do one of the dessert activities. All of the appetizer tasks support prior grade level connections, such as fluently adding within 5 using that 10-frame app, decomposing numbers into pairs. It's a game called Shake and Spill, where students put counters into a cup. They shake 10 counters, spill it out, and see all the different combinations of 10. And then there's also that decomposing numbers into the how many more to make 10 activity, which is another important skill that students learn in kindergarten that is going to be useful for knowing those sums to 20. The main dish is a rigorous grade level task. So this is a first grade task that the teacher plans to introduce whole class as a mini lesson once she begins the unit. And then all the dessert options include an opportunity for students to decompose larger numbers and use a different model, which is the number chart instead of the 10-frame and the counters. So how might a teacher implement this menu? This particular teacher decided that she was going to work this menu over 2 weeks. So the first week, because they're first graders, she decided she's only going to give out the appetizer. This is going to be given before she starts the new unit on sums to 20. And it also helps her limit the number of choices that her first graders have to make. There's only 3 choices in the very beginning if she just gives out the appetizer. And then the second week, she gives out the main dish and the dessert and tells students that they have to do the main dish, and then they can choose one more activity that they want to do. Students work on this menu for the last 10 to 15 minutes of class each day, and then they'll turn it in at the end of the 2 weeks. All right, share in chat questions you have, what interests you or what stands out to you. And you will get an opportunity to kind of test out all of these tasks to see what it would be like from the student point of view. Couple of questions. Loving the layout, how is this assigned? So in this particular example, because it's the beginning of the year, the teacher is going to give out the appetizer during week 1 so that students only have 3 choices to choose from. You know, in the very beginning of the year, if your students have never used menus or never had to make choices on their own before, which is very, it's not uncommon that students don't have practice making good choices. So it may be a skill that you need to teach them, and we'll talk some more about that later. But if you give just 3 choices in the beginning, then it makes it a little more manageable. And then the second week, when she introduces the unit and students have built up their skills from kindergarten, those appetizer skills, right? Then she will connect the first grade skill with that main dish activity, introducing that whole class, and then sending students off to work on that. And then one more activity of their choice. How do they show their completed work? Good question, Jesse. In the Google folder, you'll see on the student facing, these are all linked to certain activities. Some of them are, it's like a slide where students could actually type it in and then turn it back into their teacher. I thought it would be important to do a digital version since we maybe are all going to be digital in the fall. So you could do it that way. If you are face-to-face, it might be something that students do on paper and actually turn in to their teacher at the end of the 2 weeks. We'll also talk during the implementation time about how to help students manage that work, right? Like all those different activities. Remember, they're not doing all of them, they're only doing 3. So how do they turn in those 3 assignments? How do they keep track of how many assignments they've done? We'll give some strategies for that as well. Odalis says, considering this approach, can students be provided with the whole spread to allow them to move ahead more independently? Yes. So Odalis, you'll see in some of the other examples that I give, or share rather, that it doesn't have to be given in this way. This was just one example of like, it's the beginning of the year. My students have no clue how to use a menu and they're young and don't know how to make good choices. So this one is much more scaffolded and prescriptive than maybe some of the other ones I'm going to show later. Comment coming in about great buy-in because students get to own the assignment and choose what they want. Of course, that's the whole idea behind menus, Regina. I love what you just said there because it's really like the commercial for menus and choice boards. Okay, so let's move on to a 3rd through 5th grade example. And again, you will get more time if you want to dive more into the K2 menu at the very end. I'm going to go through one more example and then you'll have time to dive into each one of these. So this example is a 3rd through 5th grade classroom, and it is actually it's a 4th grade classroom rather, but it is the layout is different. This is not a restaurant menu, but this is a tic-tac-toe board. This framework of a tic-tac-toe board could be used in K2 as well. I'm just showing a variety of things. So you can think about how you want to adapt any of these for your situation. So this 4th grade class has been learning about generalizing place value. And this class in particular has a group of students who need additional language support. And there's also a variety of student interests, you know, those preteens. So the teacher has decided that before she even distributes the board, she's going to use a formative assessment, such as a discussion or an exit ticket, to help her figure out where each student will start. So in this particular case, students are going to have free choice throughout the whole board, but the teacher is going to choose where they start. So the red row is activities that she picked that all have to do with reading and writing multi-digit numbers. The white row is all about modeling numbers in different ways. And the blue row is all about recognizing patterns and generalizing place value. Also, you'll note that the top row, all of the activities include a video. The teacher chose this because there's a number of students who need additional language support in the class, and she thought that they might benefit from hearing the content multiple times and at their own pace. So if they want to stop it and play it again, they can. In particular, with place value, this is really important because you have to read and say the words correctly. And so by hearing others or getting time opportunities to practice recording themselves saying numbers, then she's really meeting the needs of those individual students that have language support needs. So in this particular scenario, the teacher selects one activity from the assigned row. So let's say I'm going to just use Carol here. I might assign Carol to the matching cards activity. So I tell her she has to start there, but then she can choose 2 more activities anywhere on the board to make tic-tac-toe. Or if she really doesn't want to make tic-tac-toe 3 in a row or 3 diagonal, then maybe she just picks any other 2 that she'd like. You can arrange that as the teacher however you want. So this strategy allows the teacher to target student work or students' needs, but still allows for student choice as well. Because sometimes teachers say, well, they don't know what they need. They're just going to pick anything on the board. So this is one way that you can really tailor it to what students need. Yeah, so Dallas is saying this is great to support LD students as well. Yeah, the videos. A board like this might take several days to complete. They might do it during flex time or distant learning days when they don't have synchronous lessons. And then a board like this could also be expanded. So over time, you might make it a bingo themed and have more choices, right? 25 choices on the board, and students could work on it throughout the quarter or the semester. If you're in high school, Carol, yeah, this could totally work in high school as a bingo board with even more choices, where you include things that spiral and review skills that are going to be applied to other major concepts throughout the year. So for instance, in 4th grade, while this one is dealing with place value, you might expand it to also include multiplying and dividing using place value strategies. All right, let's look at this next menu. Feel free to throw questions in the chat as we're going. And if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, go for it. So this next example, it says menu for grades 6 through 8, but it really, in the folder, in the Google Drive folder, it all goes all the way up to 6 through 12. So there is an algebra 1, 2 example as well. I've got you in mind, Carol. You and there was another high school teacher that pulled me up. So this is a class of 6th graders that's working on rates. And the teacher is building students' ratio and rate reasoning to solve real-world math problems. That is standard 6RP A3. And in the week prior, students were taught 6RP A1 and 6RP A2. So those are 2 related standards that deal with understanding the concept of ratio and unit rate. So while they were taught these skills last week, the teacher felt like they needed just more time, right? More time to really let the information simmer and develop, right? So what she decided was that she was going to incorporate some of the 6RP1 and 6RP2 standards into the menu for this coming week. So she creates, this is a 258 menu where activities are assigned a point value and students have to do X number of activities to reach a certain point value that the teacher sets. So let's say this teacher says you have to earn 10 points. So they can choose any combination of activities to make the 10 points. So cooking with math is worth 2 points. And shopping spree is worth 5 points. So if I were trying to earn 10 points, maybe I do the road trip activity and I do the cooking with math activity, and that only gets me 7 points. So now I have to do another 5-point activity or an 8-point activity. The point value is assigned based on the cognitive demand. So the 2-point tasks are things that are less demanding than the 5 or the 8-point tasks, but still related. So in this case, the 2-point tasks are related to that RP1 and RP2 standard. And then the 5 and the 8-point tasks are related to the skills that she's building this particular week with regards to solving real world ratio and rate problems. You might give a menu like this to students to work on during their flex time as you're going through the unit. So they can already get started with the 2-point task because they had those lessons the previous week and it's more of like a review. And then the 5 and the 8-point task, they will dive into as you are going through the lessons currently that week. I think I hear a question coming. Anyone? All right, so then let's take some time to dive into some of each of those menus, give you time to explore it on your own and really process it. And then if you have questions about it, we'll come back and share. So in the Google folder, you will see, let's see, let me pull it up here. You'll see a folder for 3.5, 6.12, and K2. Go ahead and click on that folder, and then inside the folder is the menu. There's a student-facing one and the teacher one and a template. So if you want to keep it and use it, go for it. Click File and make a copy or download for your own use. So we will take 10 minutes now to dive deeper into the choice board of your choice, and then we'll come back, and I'd like for you to share in the chat box how this menu or choice board might help your students access grade level content or anything maybe that is interest of you. So our 10 minutes will start now. We will come back at 11:04. And feel free to ask questions over the audio as you're exploring. All right, you got about 1 minute left, and then we're going to go ahead and take a break. So if you'd like, you can share the reflection in chat before you take your break, or you can take your break and then share your reflection back in the chat when you come back for break. So about 1 more minute, and then we'll take a break. All right, so it is 11:05. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 11:10, and I look forward to picking up with you there. Some of you have already thrown your reflection in the chat. Thank you for that. If not, just do it right before we come back from break. All right, it is 11:10, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. It seems like many of us threw our thoughts in the chat either before the break started or right at the end, so I'll just share some of the highlights. It seems like many of us are considering this tool for like hybrid or remote learning, and there's another common theme that you can and should select tasks that meet your students' needs and their interest, right? What are the things that they're interested in? Because doing so will increase ownership. That was something that Sunny was sharing, creates student ownership of learning, and also engagement, right? I mean, a lot of, if the students are interested in the activities that are presented, then they'll dive right in and be fully engaged and immersed in those tasks. It's also a great way to show them how math is used in the real world beyond just a worksheet or this is the next chapter in the book. But like, oh, I might actually use this when I'm trying to build a fence for my dog or whatever the scenario might be. Dallas was sharing, these provide the guidelines on how to meet the needs of students with IEPs and 504s. So meeting a range of needs in your classroom as well. I think someone mentioned earlier about LD students as well, being able to incorporate tasks that meet their needs without them being singled out. It also helps with independence, yes. Yeah, Sarah, do you want to speak some more about that? That was another big theme that came up, being able to use this in both environments, remote and hybrid. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if anybody wants to add on to what's being said around using it in a remote environment, please do share. Be brave, you can unmute yourself. Sarah, I think you did unmute yourself, but we can't hear you. Well, let me try. There's this additional idea coming in about, I know that I'll have to give follow-up instructions and make instructions clearer for some of the activities for some kids. Some are very interactive kids who need this. I like how families can do this at any time. They're not boxed into a schedule. Yeah, that's another good point for the remote learning, is that this tool could be used over several days. And that students can choose when to do them as well. So in this next session, we're going to talk about many of the ideas that you're bringing up already. How can we actually make this work in our classroom? How can we make it work in our remote learning environment? So I'll give you some tips, but I also want you to share some of the ideas that you're already getting. Sarah was saying she can't get her microphone to work. That's fine, but she did type in the chat. She was thinking that students could talk about the choices they were interested in and then complete them on their own. Yes, I agree. And you can even have students work in pairs on tasks as well. So that also is another opportunity for collaboration and discussion, which is so important in math class for making meaning. Anytime you use a game, it's probably going to require that they play with someone else. So that's another way to get that communication in. So a couple of questions earlier came in about, specifics on the menu and whether you can or can't do this with your menu. And I want to just throw out there this idea that there's no hard and fast rules for creating a menu. The goal really is just to provide students with choice and then meet the needs of a large range of students in your classroom. So that being said, you can make a menu or a choice board as prescriptive as you'd like. On the screen, there's a continuum that shows a more prescriptive menu to the left and one that allows for more free choice on the right. So all the way on the left is students could complete all the items on your menu. So maybe there are 5 items and you want everyone to complete all 5. But the choice comes in where students get to choose what order they want to complete the menu in. That would be probably the most prescriptive situation. All the way on the other side of the continuum is free choice. Maybe you even allow students to choose how many tasks they complete. So let's say you give the 5 activities out and you just say turn it in by the end of the week, and they can choose how many of those activities they do. And they can choose what order they want to do them in. Or I've even seen menus where the students there's a free choice box and students get to select their own activity. They have to get it approved by the teacher first, but they choose their own activity. They create it themselves. So take a moment to read the other options on the continuum. And then let's use our annotate tools to share which one is of most interest to you, which one could you see yourself using. And if you don't have annotate tools, you can type it in the chat box. So it seems like we're all kind of falling in the middle there. And again, there's no hard and fast rule. So you could start all the way at the left at the beginning of the year and then move closer to the right as you feel students are ready to handle it, or as you get more comfortable with the format. Carol's sharing in chat that it could also be used as extra credit if they do multiple activities. Yes, Carol, I've totally seen that with the 258 menu. So maybe the standard is 10, but some students choose to earn 12 points just in case they get something wrong and they don't get full credit for something. They want to make sure that they get all 10 points, even if they make some errors along the way. Matilda is saying the choice board also addresses the need for extra work students might want. We heard that in the spring. Yeah. If you give a tic-tac-toe board and you tell them they only have to do 3, why can't the parent say, hey, but I want you to do 5? Of course. Kayla saying she likes the third option. Yeah, it seems like most of us are falling in the middle there. Again, one way is not more correct than another. So whatever works for you, and you may choose a combination of those depending on what the skill is, who your students end up being, and what you find you can manage. So as we think about management, we all have a lot on our plate. That is one thing I have not forgotten about teaching in the classroom with students, is there just always seems to be a lot to be juggling, particularly as we start to think about learning new tools, digital tools, and how to transition to online teaching. So you want to make sure that you have a plan in place for monitoring student performance and holding students accountable, so that this doesn't turn into just like chaos, right? So I'm going to share some ideas for how you might monitor students and help hold them accountable. Is there a question? Someone unmuted themselves. Maybe that was by accident. So we'll start on the left at the very top. There's a picture of a blue folder. So 2-pocket folders are great for helping students keep track of their finished and unfinished work. It also is easy for you, the teacher, to maybe just take home a small set of folders to look at each day. Now, that of course is if you're in a face-to-face situation. If you're remote, then maybe you make a digital folder where students complete their work and upload it as they're done, and you just assign to yourself, okay, I'm going to look at these 5 students out of a class of 20 today, and then by the end of the week, you've looked at where everybody is, and you can provide feedback using the comment feature. A lot of the digital tools that we have, like Google Slides and Google Docs, you can use an insert comment feature. If you were face-to-face, you could always just put comments on sticky notes and hand the folders back to the students. Checklists are another great way to help students monitor their own progress throughout the menu. They can check off things as they complete them. And for younger students, you might consider something like a shape menu, where it's pictured to the right there with the blue circles and the triangle. where the activities are listed inside the shapes, and as students finish or choose an activity, they color that shape in. So think back to the K2 menu that we had with the appetizer and the main dish and dessert. When the students finish one of those activities, they might circle it or they might color that one in so that they can keep track of what they've done and what they still need to do and what the goal is. What about grading and accountability, making sure that students are making progress and using their time wisely? One idea might be to do a class discussion. If you're in person, it might be 4 corners. So anybody who did the Pathways game is going to go to corner A and discuss what you discovered and discuss your game recording sheet in corner A. Or if you are in a remote environment, maybe you do breakout rooms. And students who all worked on activity A are going to go and talk about what they discovered and help each other with activity A. And then you can just pop into those discussions to get a sense and a handle of what the needs are and where you might give additional support. Exit tickets, I think we're all familiar with those, but you can just put a question on a sticky note or on a Padlet and ask students to jot down what they've mastered or what they feel comfortable with, or maybe you go the other way and you ask them to share, you know, what they still have questions about. Another idea is a class chart. So let's say everyone is playing a game like Shake and Spill. We talked about that one earlier with the counters and spilling the counters and coming up with the different combinations for 10. Maybe you have a chart where students can just add what combinations they found to the chart and sign their name next to the combinations they found, or even if you do that in a digital document. That will give you a quick snapshot of whole class learning as well. And then, of course, the tried and true rubric. Those can be very generalized so that you can use them no matter which type of menu you're using, and maybe keep the same rubric throughout the year. So we'll do just as we did before. I'm going to give you the annotate tools again. Go ahead and place an arrow or circle the idea that maybe interests you the most. Which one could you see yourself doing? And if you have some other tools in your toolbox that you already have been using to monitor and hold students accountable in other ways, please share that, because I'm sure it can be adapted to work with menus or choice boards as well. A couple of people liking the checklist. And there's a template for a checklist menu in the, I think it's the grades 6 through 12 folder. But remember, even though I group them that way, any format of menu could be used with any grade level. A couple people liking class discussion. Any other new ideas that anybody that I didn't capture that someone wants to share out over the chat or over audio? Flipgrid for an explanation. Yes, Michelle, I like that idea as well, because they can record themselves on that tool, right? So they can talk. Digital portfolios is another idea coming in the chat. All right, so you guys have gotten a good picture, a big picture rather, of menus so far. So I'd like to know, how are you thinking that you might fit this into your class schedule? And then I'll share some ideas as well. But I'd like to know what you're already thinking. How might you fit this in? Where do you see it going? I know Carol said she could see it as a extra credit type activity, like if you finish early, you can do X, Y, and Z. Matilda's saying she's thinking of notebooks, OneNote notebooks to keep their work. Yes, OneNote would work. Sandra's agreeing with you. I have to learn more about that one. So if anyone's planning to use that one, I would love to get in on that and be able to see how you organize it and be able to share that with others. Padlet can be a good forum to share strategies as well and view ideas in formal assessment. Yeah, you could use the Padlet like the class chart where students just post their thinking about a problem or their game recording sheet or whatever the task might be right there on Padlet. And I did find recently, Odalis, as well, that Padlet has a recording tool. So you could use it like Michelle is saying, how you could use Flipgrid, where they could record their response as well. All right. One of the ways that you might fit menus into your class schedule is how we discussed earlier in that K2 scenario, where students have had exposure in the past, but they need more time to practice or recall that prior knowledge in preparation for the new content that you're going to teach. So when you're using a menu in this way, you might give that menu out several weeks before the new unit to build students' prior knowledge so that when you begin teaching that new content, the students are ready to engage and have that knowledge fresh in their minds. Another idea is enrichment, as Carol had mentioned earlier. I kind of think of that similar to, well, actually, that's the next one, early finishers. I kind of liken this to the DEAR time back in the day when independent reading was like an additional task that you might do in ELA class if you finish early. It's always very easy to do that with math games as well, because the whole class is familiar with it already, and it's a very easy pivot to put that game on a menu. Flex time and distance learning days, students might work on the task or the menu for additional practice on the days when they're not meeting synchronous with you. You might also use it at the end of a unit. We didn't look at an example like this, but you could use it for additional practice or to demonstrate learning and to give students options on multiple representations. A lot of the math standards say that they want students to model the skill with, maybe they offer 2 or 3 different choices with a drawing or with a number line or with fraction strips, right? And so with your menu, you might offer all of those options as ways that students can demonstrate their learning for a particular standard. Menus and choice boards can be used over the course of a few days, or you might even go the entire 9 weeks. It's really up to you. You have a lot of flexibility with this. Matilda's sharing in chat that she's a support teacher and she plans to connect choice boards to what they're doing in the classroom. So when she meets with them in a small group, she might work through their choice of task, or she might do in tier 3 interventions. This would allow her to support and scaffold learning for students through activities that are fun, but still content-based. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that additional idea, Matilda. It'd be great to collaborate as well with that classroom teacher so that there may be some activities on there that she wants to use with the whole class. So how do you begin? The good news is you've already begun planning and thinking about like what menus look like as far as implementation and introducing to students how you might begin. But let's think now about what are some things you want to have in place before you even start with students. So the first idea is kind of a no-brainer if you've been in the classroom. It's you want to have all the materials ready at the beginning before you hand out the menus, so that as students, if students select, you know, activity Y, you don't have to be searching for the materials for that in the moment, right? It's already all there and ready to go. Some teachers use bins or shelves to organize the materials needed for each task, but this allows everyone to start at every station or task that they're doing on day one. They don't have to wait until you gather the materials for it. We talked about this next one at the very beginning, encouraging good choice making. Our students are not necessarily walking in on day one with good choice making skills. So we want to build that up in them. That's something they're going to need as an adult. So this is an opportunity to teach those skills. You want to start maybe with 3 predetermined choices and then allowing students to choose one of those and then building on that as the year goes through. Games, games, games. These are always a win and they're easy to find. They're in your curriculum as like that extra thing you can do if there's extra time that we never have. So take some of those games, put them in your menu. They're also easily differentiated. You can change up the dice to make the game different for different students depending on their needs. The games also help increase collaboration and discussion amongst students. They can play with different partners to get a different experience each time. One of the ideas that you guys already brought to the surface is making sure you really know your students so that you can pick tasks that are high interest to them. That helps a lot with management because students will have buy-in right from the jump. Lessen the load for yourself. Don't always search for new tasks. Use things that are already existing in your curriculum. And I'm going to provide some resources today on places that you can go to get tasks for your menu. Take problems, word problems from your curriculum, adjust them by making them more open-ended or changing the numbers or eliminating the numbers altogether and having students figure out, oh, the answer is 2100. What could the factors be? And having them list what all the factors could be. So anything you can do to take existing problems and open them up so that there's a wider variety of ways to solve the problem and more than one answer, those are great tasks for a menu. And then in the very beginning, when you introduce menus and choice boards to students, you'll want to just observe them the first few days. That will help you manage behaviors and answer questions during that work time. And then as students get more comfortable with the menu and the choice board, then you might be freed up to use that same time when students are working on the choice board to pull a small group or work with students individually on things. This slide will be shared with you at the end, but I do want to point out just on here, these are different resources we've already been using, like the Coherence map. This one at the very bottom, differentiating instruction with menus and math. Last session, a couple of teachers had asked about, well, where can I find some menus maybe that are already done? This is a collection. It's a series for all different grade levels. I want to say she probably has like 20 different books out there. It's an additional resource if you're looking for some that are already made that you might just modify or tweak. And then, of course, you have the ones that I shared with you today. Those are all yours. You can tweak them as you see fit. All right, let's pause here a moment and take any questions and wonderings that you may have so far before we move into our little make and take period where you'll get to start curating your own resources for your own menu and choice board. Can we just all agree that wait time in a remote environment is super awkward for the presenter? Well, I'm here if anyone has questions as we go along. I'm going to keep going, but if something pops up, feel free. Yeah. There's a question coming in about games and how to do those in a like online environment, what that might look like. I have some tools for you with regards to that, so stay tuned. We're going to dive into that this session. So Dallas is sharing she enjoys games as a form of assessment without the students feeling there's pressure. Generally, this works specifically with students that are anxious about math. I agree. So Dallas, I just spent viewing a friend's daughter because of that exact reason. She's very anxious about math and really didn't do well on an assessment. And so I was sharing with her mother some ways to like combat that math anxiety. It's a real thing. And games are one of the best ways, I think, because it's fun and it really takes the pressure off of that math is timed and I have to memorize these things. And yeah, it just really relaxes everyone a bit. So I concur. So many of the decisions you guys will be making when creating your menus and choice boards are going to be dependent on the learners you're working with. Their prior knowledge, their experiences, their learning styles are going to guide a lot of the choices that you make. But so there's only so much that we can do in advance in terms of preparing something that you can walk back to your classroom with. What I thought might be useful is to have some resources in your back pocket that you can pull out when you need them and you do have a sense of your students and what their learning styles are. Then you can just pull from these resources to create a menu for you. So inside the Google folder, there is a planning document that you're free to open up and just kind of collect your ideas as we go. If you'd rather not and you just want to jot them down or bookmark them on your computer, that's fine too. I will say though, the links that I'm going to talk about are right in that document as well. So if we're in the Google folder and we pull up the personal planning template, the links to the focus document, the coherence map, all of that is right here. All right, so now I'm going to walk you through how do we start that planning process for menus. The first step is going to be to identify the essential learning that you want to tackle with your menu. And I'm going to be honest with you, menus and choice boards can take up quite a bit of time to prepare, but once you have it, you can save it and easily switch one or two activities out. But it is a task to take on, right? And so you want to think about what content you're going to end up revisiting most of the school year. That way you can use the menu throughout the year and just tweak it. Take in one activity, take one activity out, throw another one in, or just add a few more activities. So in order to help you identify what that essential learning is and where you're going to spend the majority of the year, one of the documents I suggest you bookmarking and saving is the focus documents from Student Achievement Partners. Those documents lay out the major clusters, the major time of the school year. And these, I think, are a good starting point for where you might spend your time creating a menu, because this is going to be like 65 to 85% of your instructional time. So thinking about the example from the 3-5 menu, this is the focus document for 4th grade, and the teacher selected 4 NBT, generalizing place value. Anything that is that dark green square on the focus document is something maybe you would consider creating a menu for. So to get to that document, you're going to click right here in the planning document where it says focus documents. You can click on that and it'll open right up and you can view the grade level that you're working with. And they do not have one specifically for high school because high school is a whole nother beast that all of the mathematics community is trying to get under control. But there is a document that has a high level view of what some prerequisites are that would be useful for looking at, Carol, as well, if you're not already familiar. So you can just view the file, you don't have to download it, and then you can look at the dark green squares to identify a cluster that is going to be the majority of the time that you're going to spend at your particular grade level. Yes, I have heard of Dr. Nikki Newton. I was trying to get her to come and do some PD. Yes. Save that, share it at the very end, Matilda, we're going to have a document where we can share resources. So just save that idea for me and we'll throw it in that box for people. All right, so I'm going to give you, let's say 4 minutes, 5 minutes to take a look at the focus document and then identify a major cluster of interest to you that you just want to focus your time on for today. When you've got a cluster, throw it in the chat box so that I know we're ready to move on. The link to the focus documents are inside this range of learners folder in the personal planning template. What you need for each part of this process is linked right there, focus documents. But I also threw it in the chat too. Oh, fractions, how lovely. A couple of us are pulling out the fraction standards. Yeah, that's a big one. Oh, Dallas, the teachers on Wednesday, they all chose 7EE too. Quite a few of them. And the ratio cluster as well. All right, so I see Sarah and Sandra both are choosing 4 NFA. So that's, maybe you guys can, we'll share in a document in a moment and maybe whatever you each find, you can team up. All right, let's move on to the next step. So continuing with that example, once you've selected the domain and the major cluster rather, you want to go and use that coherence map that we looked at in the beginning. So you want to take the coherence map, take that standard, and look for either prior knowledge standards or current grade level standards that connect with the essential learning that you think you might want to address on your menu or your choice board. So in the example on the screen, that 4th grade place value menu that we looked at earlier, the teacher selected for MBTA 1 and linked it back to some 2nd grade standards. Those were all the videos on place value and reading and writing numbers. She connected it to 4 MBTA 2, but then she decided not to connect it to 4 MBTA 3. What many of you will find is that when you go into the coherence map, there may be like 5 or 6 standards related to the one that you've selected. Your menu doesn't have to address all of those standards. You can narrow it down. So you could just pick what you think is going to have the most impact on your students. And again, we don't know the students yet, so we can only do so much with this right now, but this is kind of the process that you would go through to selecting standards for your menu. So I'll give you about 5 minutes to map that standard and identify at least one other standard that's connected that you want to use on the menu. Once you've found a standard that maybe connects to what you're thinking you want to focus on, you can throw those 2 standards in the chat box. Again, please don't feel overwhelmed if there's a bunch of standards connected to the one you want to focus on. That's okay. We kind of expect that because we know math is connected, right? So don't be discouraged by that. Just narrow your own focus based on what you know about the math you teach and what you anticipate students might be struggling with, or what you anticipate maybe they missed from the previous school year. All right. Couple of ideas coming in, connecting to K and BTA, 3NFA1 and 3NFA3. Those are 2 fraction standards from 3rd grade. Hopefully you have at least a sense of how you're going to use that focus document and the coherence map to pick out the standards that you want to target. The slide on the screen is going to be shared with you. It is basically just a compilation of different places where you might begin to find resources that you want to use on your actual menu related to those standards. One in particular that I want to point out, because someone mentioned about games and how to find digital games in the chat with me, is this K5 investigations under digital games and tools. So on the left, I have just some investigations that are paper pencil, still easily transmittable in a remote environment. It would just be like a PDF. In the middle are digital tools and games, virtual manipulatives and simulations, as well as these games, the K5 investigations. So I want to highlight this website for a moment. It does only go kindergarten through 5th grade. I know we have some secondary teachers in the room, but all of these games are digital, and they also have a paper pencil component as well. So you can use them in either environment, but they match the Bridges curriculum. However, the games are still good. So on the left, you just pull up one of the grades that you're looking for. And then, let me see, there was one that I know in particular. I don't know, let's just try like roll and record. But the game is here, and there's directions up at the top, and then like a digital dice that the student would roll. So in this case, the kindergartner would roll, they'd see 5, and then they would record 5 in the box. So practice writing and recognizing numbers and counting. And then in the top right corner, there's always a printable sheet of the same game as well. So if you are at some point back in your classroom and have an opportunity to give paper pencil, that's the way to do it as well. So check that website out. That's one that I'll highlight on here. And then on the far right, these are just some additional open source curriculums, meaning they're free, anybody can use them. So if you are at home and you want to start preparing for the new school year, but all of your curriculum materials are back at school, feel free to check out these resources that are online. And then also, even when you do get back to your classroom and you have your curriculum resources, these are additional ones that you can check out if you're looking for games and so forth. So again, this slide is inside the Google folder. It is called Curating Resources, and it's there for you, and it's all hyperlinked. A couple comments coming in. Thanks for that page. Hard time with Pearson Online. Yeah, that website doesn't require a login. It doesn't require anything. You just go to the link, and all the games are there. So you can hyperlink a specific game and send that to students, or you could just send that out as a resource for parents, or if you're a coach, share it with your teachers and let them select what they need. All right, well, we are nearing the end of our time. It's 11:57. I would like to just take a quick moment and share with you one other resource that's in the Google folder. It is the Sharing with Colleagues spreadsheet. So if you want, a couple people shared from on Wednesday some resources. I know Matilda had one that she was sharing earlier. She can share it here. Just type in if you have any additional resources that would be helpful for finding a menu, or if you already have a couple of you were sharing, Sarah's sharing, she's going to connect 4NFA, 3NF3, and 408-2, because those all are connected in that first unit and it comes before the fraction. So maybe, throw those in this Google document, because it's another resource for us to share ideas with each other. And I know a couple of you teach the same grade level. Yesterday, an idea came up about Think Dots by Eric Jensen. Apparently, that is a book that has menu sort type activities, but it deals with the dice. So the students roll the dice, and then whatever number shows up on the dice is the activity they do. So you can either use that in its format, or you can take the activities from there and put them on a menu and incorporate more choice as opposed to probability, whatever you think would best meet your students' needs. Oh, yes, I see that. Someone's sharing the math running records, yes, with Dr. Nikki Newton. And one way you might incorporate that with menus is when students are working on their menus, you might pull individual students to interview them during that time, so that you can get a sense of where they are with their fact fluency and what they need additional support with. And she says it also has strategies to persevere in problem solving as well. And I may go back from the chat and connect some of the standards you guys shared and put them in this document as well. Regardless, if you have saved the Google folder and moved it to your drive, you can do that by just going up to right-clicking on the folder and then putting Add Shortcut to Drive. That will save the document to your Google Drive folder, and then you'll be able to come back to this folder at any time. The other way to do it is just save my email, and then you'll always have the link that way as well. All right, it is just 12 o'clock. Thank you so much for attending today. We talked about linking the content standards within and across grade levels. We talked about how to develop the menus and choice boards so that you can meet a range of needs as well as a range of levels of readiness. And all throughout, we talked about different ways to give students choice in math class. During the break, I marked attendance, so you should have gotten an email stating that there's a survey for you to complete. If you complete the survey, then your professional learning units will be emailed to you automatically 24 hours after the survey is completed. I will put the information to the Google folder back in the chat box one more time for you. And it's also in my email, and I'll probably send another like follow-up email today as well with the link. So if you are misplace it, you can find it that way as well. I really appreciate feedback. So please make sure you do the survey. In addition, you get your professional learning units when you do the survey. And as always, I am available for technical assistance. So if you really liked what you heard today and feel like there's a group of teachers at your school that would benefit from hearing the same thing, I am more than happy to do customized sessions for your school team, your grade level, or even just to work with you individually and help develop a menu or choice board for your students. And I'm always looking for classes to partner with to feature some of the things we're learning about. So if you want to try a menu or choice board out in your classroom, I'd love to help and maybe be able to collect and share some of your students' work with other teachers. So thank you so much.